Excellent. So we're starting to record right now. So again, welcome everybody. Today we're going to do a high-level overview of Revizto 4.4 and the workflows that are all entailed with it. So it should be a great overview for customers that maybe aren't as familiar with some of the new features in Revizto, as well as people that might be evaluating Revizto on a future project. So let's just start off with some of the basics of Revizto. The first thing to note about Revizto is similar to how Navisworks functions, we don't actually design or build within Revizto. So it takes geometry and information from files like AutoCAD, files linked in like Tekla files and Navisworks, RVT files, and it manipulates and takes that data into a game engine format with the same geometry and intelligent information. So Revizto is really the central communication hub between all these platforms. So again, it's utilized for coordination, tracking issues, better understanding your model, VR, etc. So the first step of this process typically happens in schematic design or DD, obviously starting from Revit. So if we are initiating this process from Revit, the Revizto is going to function the same way as if we were going to export this out of AutoCAD or Navisworks. So we're going to start with Revit today. And basically what we would do here is export this project. So, right, we have all of these models. We've got a pretty heavy Revit model. I like to use these heavier projects as it's a real life example for you guys with actual projects you'd be working on. I am using a 15-inch laptop here. So for any of you guys using real workstations, expect to have superior performance to what you're seeing on my screen today. So again, the first process here is I'm going to manage these links. So it's a great aspect for C4R if you have these links being constantly updated, or if you have a way to keep a federated Navisworks or Revit file. So in this case, we have all these different disciplines linked in. We can turn off the ones we don't want to bring in or turn them all on. Usually we recommend doing all of the federation within Revit or Navisworks, depending that utilizing BoxSync and Navisworks or some other script you guys might have. So once we have these models, have this model federated out of Navisworks, I'm going to start the export process. So what I would do is I come into the Revizto tab within our toolbar, and because I have the plugin for Revit, I'm going to click Export to Revizto. So when I export this project initially, it's going to come up with this menu. So it's going to ask, would I like to export the 3D model with all the different appended link files in here? And I'm going to say yes. Export it views, levels, materials, use rendered appearance, export grids. I'm going to check all of these. Bring in phases. That's a new one for 4.4. If I keep use rendered appearance, it's going to make this model a little prettier than what we have in Revit. If you'd like to keep the filters that you have and color-coded disciplines in Revit, I would uncheck use rendered appearance. We do have a way to alter the color of different models for coordination purposes inside of Revizto as well, so that's up to you guys. For now, we'll keep it checked, and we're going to override those colors in Revit and do the manipulation inside of Revizto. So the next thing, again, for the initial setup is we're going to go into sheets. So Revizto is going to bring in every single sheet that is linked into the model. These are, we can see our plumbing, structural, fire protection, etc. And you can see that I actually don't have them all checked. So the sheets take a couple seconds a piece because Revizto is calculating coordinate information and a lot of other intelligent things you'll get to see during this webinar. So they do take a little bit of time coming in. So for example, if you have 10,000 sheets in your project and you're only going to use 150 of them, don't bring in 10,000 if you want to have a shorter export time. So we can also change from vector format to image. Image are going to be a little bit quicker to export, but it's not going to give you that ability to zoom in on some of these massive sheets. So if it's not a very detailed plan, certainly you can get away with image. So once I've done that, I am going to just select save, and I would export this into Revizto. Because I've already done that, you'll notice that if I open up Revizto, we have that model exported. This project took, I think, about 15 minutes to export on my machine. It's a local process, so it's converting this local RVT file into a Revizto game engine file. So once I've originally exported this and we can confirm, okay, all the geometry is there, we have the information that we'd like inside of the model, we can see all the metadata, and we want to share that with our team, we can do that. So next I'd come into the share button. And because I've already shared this with a couple of people, I don't have this option, but we're going to see a button that says share to cloud or shared location. Because this is a local game engine file, we need to share this to the Revizto cloud or a shared location if our project is not allowed to be on the cloud. Once we do that, we have the ability then to invite people. If you don't see this ability to invite people, this file is still local, and it's just like a local converted game engine file. So I'll add in team members. I'll add in, let's see here. gmail.com. And I can say, okay, he's an architect for this project. So I'll click invite. When I invite this individual to the team, they are going to consume one of our licenses. So because settles@gmail.com does not have a license, you can see that it's taking a license away from me, and we've invited a team member. If I want to take that license away from this individual, I can just select the X next to their name. So underneath architect in this example, we have access levels associated to each of those. So if I come in here, I can see all the different access levels and what an architect for this specific project is going to be able to do. So we want them to be able to comment on issues. Maybe we want them to be able to append the 3D model. Maybe we don't want them to be able to append to our 3D model, and we just want it to be exported from one location. So we can specify exactly what they have the ability to do and the custom name associated with that. So I'm going to jump back to our 3D model and do one more thing in Revit. So now that I've initiated this project, what I'm going to do, so I don't have to manually select this export button every time the model changes, because we have, in this example, C4R, I'm going to come up here and select Export Scheduler. Export Scheduler is really powerful, and we can specify the exact dates so we don't have to worry about uploading this to cloud or pushing this out to our team. So if I want it every single day at midnight, we can do that. So once we've scheduled this export, we'll select OK. We'll notice that if we have multiple projects, these will all show up on our desktop underneath the Revizto exporter. So if I double click on this and I open this up, we'll be able to see all of our scheduled tasks being exported no matter what program they're for. So it's basically a timeline. And because I don't have any schedules right now, you're not seeing any there. So enough with Revit. We're going to jump into Revizto and start going through some of the benefits of 4.4 and Revizto in general. So navigation, start with the basics. So navigation, I'm utilizing the W, A, D, and S key. Those are the game engine keys. That's the most popular aspect of Revizto, is utilizing those game engine functionality. So if we come into our preference button, another popular one is going to be Navisworks walk mode. So this is going to be able to push and pull the model just like we are in Navisworks. Additionally, we can change within the preferences as well. We can change the graphic setting if we'd like beautiful or maybe simple. If we're working on a larger project, or we have limited hardware, we can change the quality of the model. Additionally, ways to allow your graphics card or limited hardware to keep up with the model, and I'll turn this to the highest setting, is isolating parts of the model you don't want to see. So we have our topo in here. So I'm going to turn this off just for ease of navigation and ease of limited hardware. So we'll just jump into the linked files and we'll just turn off this file here. Oops, not the right one. Here it is. So we'll turn that off just to make it a little lighter and maybe some of the other things we don't need to see within navigating through the project. I also am running Navisworks and Revit as well, which usually you're not running all three programs at the same time, especially on limited hardware. So jumping right into Revizto, we're going to run through the two different platforms that we have, the two main platforms of Revizto. That's going to be 2D and 3D, and then we're going to touch on the third aspect of Revizto, which is issue tracker. So going through the 3D component of Revizto in this project is going to be, what you'll notice is that all these features are going to share a similar aspect in simplicity, and that's what we call the one-click mentality. So basically what we've challenged our users when they give us a feature, and what we challenge our developers to do is to take that feedback and be able to ingrain that into the platform, but be able to do it intuitive enough where if you don't have training in one click, you can pretty much figure out how that works. So let's start with our map feature. We're going to go from left to right the next couple of minutes just to run through these. Our map feature, extremely easy to use. One click, we can see, okay, where are we located within the project? Basically, if I drag this, we can go to any other location of the project, zoom into a specific area, and navigate just right to there. So we'll just zoom in, double click, and it's going to take us immediately into that area of the project. We can look around. We can click on things such as this door. We can see all the information from there. So a really easy way to navigate. I use this feature very regularly within Revizto. You can see on the right-hand side, it also specifies the level that we're on and the current elevation. So for example, if I want to go down to the ground level or the ceiling level, we just specify the correct level, and you're going to see it actually recut the model as it just did to show us what's on that elevation that we selected. This allows us to see some of the MEP in the ceiling. And if we want to come over by this duct, all we'd have to do is double click, and it's going to take us immediately into that aspect. So rooms, I didn't bring in the rooms from Revit, so our room names won't pop up on here, but if you brought those in, you'd have the room names populating as well as showing up on the map. The next button is going to be viewpoints. Viewpoints, you're going to bring in all the viewpoints from the original file. So in this case, it was Revit. So you'll see all of our Revit viewpoints underneath original. Additionally, here we have the Revizto viewpoints. So the Revizto viewpoints are actually really nice because anything that we filter, isolate, color code, it's going to remember that within Revizto. So if we have a coordination view that we really like, where we might have isolated just the structural model and the engineering model, we can isolate those, color code them, create a viewpoint, and name it, engineering coordination view. So we can always jump back to that view or save that as the starting point. So when our project reaches that phase where we're doing coordination, when people enter the project or select the home button, it's always going to take them back to that original coordination view. So you can see how all the civil model just turned back on because I selected home and we have that turned on. So the next button is issue tracker. Actually, no, the next button is measuring. So we're going to touch on our measuring tool. This follows the same mentality of one click. So the nice thing about this button, again, one click, if we didn't know how to utilize it, we simply click it, and it's almost impossible not to know how it works. So we click on this, we can see the length of the hallway. If I drag it to this side, it's going to snap and calculate, just stick to basically any point we click. Our minimum button, another fan favorite, seems like, so we can select an object such as, let's grab this, so if we grab this door, and if we want to touch on this, we can calculate the minimum distance in between those objects. There we go. So again, that should work seamlessly on your side when you try that. I think running Navisworks and GoToMeeting and this heavy Revit file seems to give it a little issue. But anyways, you can see it will calculate the minimum distance in between any object just by clicking on it. So if we clear this out, let's go to our next feature, which is Issue Tracker. So Issue Tracker is how we track any problem within the model. So this works really well. And really the primary reason folks utilize Revizto is the Issue Tracker. So it's extremely powerful. Let's just navigate up into some space here. And we're gonna pick out some piping issues that we might have here. So one of the strategies I like to use is select the control button on my keyboard, and I like to actually highlight the issues that we're having. So I selected this, and we can select this piece of duct and maybe this rail over here for example purposes. So when I do this, if I select our section box button, it's going to section out all the objects and create a section box around them that entails everything that we've highlighted. So if we jump out here, we have a pretty reasonable section box just based on the objects that we've isolated. So we can see we had an issue with that railing and some of the piping. And from here, we can utilize our new issue button. So wherever you see this plus button within Revizto is how we create issues. I like to create section boxes just to better define the space, and it also is going to transfer that back into Revit as an isometric view. So if we just create an issue while flying to the model, it's always going to come in as a perspective. So again, I'll hit new issue here. I'll drag up to maybe where our problem area is, and I'll just say test duct. Webinar test. And so from here, I'll select done. And when I scroll in here, I can just draw a markup. We can actually do a call out, describe what's going on here, utilize our markup tools to draw on this, add any additional notes we want to do. And we'll just select done. So when I select done, this is like a send button. So traditionally Revizto, or traditionally our industry as a whole has transferred markups and files based on the actual file type. So for example, if we want to make a markup in Revit, we would actually mark up a PDF. Or we take a screenshot, we convert it to the PDF, and then we'd share the physical PDF. So if somebody else makes a markup on that, they need to reshare that PDF for us to see that. Revizto functions fundamentally different from the start. So Revizto is based on coordinate location. So the fact that I just marked up something that is living in a cached local gaming file, you know, we don't have to actually go post this information on an FTP site for other people to pull it down and view this information. So when I select done, it's actually pushing this in real time. It's the same way any kind of instant message program works. So if we, you know, post a comment in a program like Slack, for example, which is an instant message program, everybody globally is getting that instant notification and can see that feedback in real time. So Revizto functions the same way from a modeling aspect. So once we have this issue in here, it shows up, went from 3D into our issue tracker. Within the issue tracker, we have our test webinar here, and I'm just going to add any notes that traditionally I would have emailed in a PDF, you know, emailed with the PDF or emailed with the screenshot or emailed with the RVT file or NWF or NWC or NWD. So we'll just write in our notes here. Hey, this looks like it could be an issue. So when I hit send, that's going out to the entire team. And once we've added that to the issue feed, anybody that has the ability to view these issues based on the manage access level is going to see this pop up in the feed. So typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to specify a deadline for when we need to get this removed. We'd like to have it done by next Friday. I'm also going to come down and I'm going to assign it to an individual. So I'm going to say, hey, you know what, Greg Keller, he's our MEP guy. He's going to fix this issue. So Greg's going to get that assigned to him. You can see that everything I've done has been tracked and timestamped within the issue tracker. And then I'm also going to come down, and if there's additional watchers or people that need to be aware of that, I can add these in as well. So I'm going to add in Nathan and Armin. I'll select done. And those guys are also going to be added to this to be able to watch this, but the issue is not assigned to them. From here, we can add a tag. Maybe Greg works for ABC MEP, and I can add a tag. These tags are all custom, and we can pull a filter then later by his exact discipline or his firm name to see how many problems they have or where they're located. Once I've assigned to Greg, I'm typically going to mark this issue as in progress. I like to do this because we know then from a visual perspective, and I'll get in this in a little bit, but from a visual perspective, all of our issues that show up in yellow are in progress, and we know they've been assigned. Obviously, once it moves and the issue's been fixed, we'll mark it as solved, and those will turn green. So within the issue tracker, we have a couple different options. So now that Greg has been assigned this, Greg can add a couple different notes in here. He can comment back and tell me that it wasn't his problem. Somebody else made a mistake, or reassign it. We can have that communication here and add about potential other challenges we're having. I can also go into the edit markup if I was Greg, and I can add in additional comments to this. So maybe I said, hey, you know what? We need to be aware of this duct as well. We can draw on that, and he can add this comment, so we can go in between. Here's what I wrote originally, and then a few minutes later, Greg made this additional markup, so we can see and collaboratively work on this aspect. So now if we select 3D, it's actually going to take us back to that same profile, that same section box that we took. We can better kind of understand that area. We can go into the 3D aspect, and we can come in and click on different information to see, whose pipe is this, or where is that coming from, get a better understanding of that. We can see the source path of that. We can turn it off. We could hide that. We could isolate it. We can color code it. Additionally, if we utilize our map feature, we can now see what is our current elevation. So where are we located on that specific issue? We can also unsection this and then see kind of a better idea of where we're located in the building. So I'll unsection that and come back to our map. So now we have an intelligent view with all of our grid lines to see exactly where that problem is located. And you can also see the tag. So now we get a visual kind of reference of where that tag is. You can see it's in orange. And we can also see that there's a couple other issues that have been created over here that are in red that need to be assigned still. Jumping back to the issue tracker, there's some other information that we can gain from here as well. So because we brought in these sheets and because we create this issue, Revizto is intelligently placing a tag whenever that issue is addressed. So in this example, it's on our plumbing reflective plan. So we'll jump up here and we can zoom into this vector format sheet and see exactly where that issue is taking place. If I go to, if I want to back out of this and I see a different area that maybe I want to address, we can click on this. In our issue feed, it's actually going to go down to test Revizto. It's going to show any kind of information that's associated with that. So these are all intelligent. It allows us to bounce back and forth between this issue, and if we want to come back to our in progress issue, we can see all this information. So this is one of the benefits of having those color codes. We can see our current issue here in blue, 2 open issues that need to be assigned, and 1 issue here in orange. So from here, we have the ability to combine these plans, so we can see the entire plan, and if we want to kind of see what that looks like on top of the 3D model, we can gain reference for anything that we have isolated. In this example, we have the entire model turned on except for our civil model. So it's just going to overlay that exact plan. And we can scroll into that area with that vector plan, and you're going to see that overlaid on top of the model. So with this, and this is all intelligently coming in from Revit based on coordinate system. So we can drag and drop and see exactly where those things are going to come in. We can detach this sheet, and we can actually pull some of our MEP through the plan just to see where those things are going to be coming up. So really, it gives you a lot of different options to better understanding that space. So now that we've assigned this issue, we got to actually go back and address that in Revit. So I'm just going to jump back here into issue tracker, and I'm going to select issue tracker within Revit. So if I was Greg and I'm working in Revit, what I typically do is I'd have Revit as my primary screen. I'd select issue tracker, and on my secondary monitor, I'm going to have Revizto pop up. So I still have my federated C4R model in this example on one screen, and then I have all this information in a direct connection to my entire team right here. So I'll just add in any additional notes that I want directly from Revit. Again, it just functions the exact same way as if you're in Revizto directly. You just launched it directly from Revit. By doing this, it gives us a couple different options. Because we've launched it in Revit, I can select this test duck webinar, and if I double click on this issue here, immediately it's going to take us to an isometric view with that area segmented. So I can come in here, and what you'll notice on my left side in my selection tree is I just have the Revizto 3D isometric view. It's one view. It's not bogging down Revit with multiple views. So if I want to save this as a working view to eliminate this pipe that we selected, I'll just come in here and save this as a new view. So again, here I can see the exact notes and markup on one screen. I can see exactly what pipe they want to get removed. I can jump back into the 2D plan to see kind of where that falls on my Revit plans. Gives us a number of them here. We'll just jump into a different one here so we can see exactly where that's falling, the grid lines, etc., while still being in Revit. So every time we create an issue, whether it's in Revit, Revizto, Navisworks, they're all tracking to the 2D plan. They're tracking into the issue tracker. They're tracking back to Revit, back to AutoCAD, back to Navisworks. If I had to single out one thing people have the most questions on, it's how that works and just getting their head wrapped around the coordinate aspect of Revizto and not the file type. So trying to maybe better illustrate that, we'll jump into our Revit model here that we have this section box, and I'm just going to select the difference. I'm going to hit Control. We'll just highlight part of this model, and we'll say, you know what, here's a potential issue here, and we're in our Revit model. Well, it doesn't make sense to go back to Revizto and create another issue. So inside of Revit, we'd select the Revizto 4 button, hit New Issue, and again, on our secondary monitor, we're going to see a screenshot come up. So I'm still in Revit. I'd name this, name it Revit Test today. And I'm going to just draw on this. We'll add our comments and notes directly on the Revit, or directly on our screenshot here. And when I select Done, as you guys probably can guess, it's actually sending that out to the entire team. So I'm still in Revit. I still got that area highlighted, and we can have direct communication based on the screenshot. So for users that aren't technical in Revit, it's a great way for them to see exactly what's going on in the design model. And we can also go into 3D. And if we go into 3D, it's going to take us back to that exact view within Revizto. If I go into the 2D aspect, it's going to drop another tag, and it's going to show me exactly where that issue was taken from within Revizto. If I want to launch Navisworks and we're doing coordination here, what I would do is I would just select Revizto and Issue Tracker, and it's actually going to just pull up the same thing you had in Revit, but on your other monitor in Navisworks. So here we are. We're nowhere close to that, but I don't really know where this section box is taken, and all I have to do is double click it. So by double clicking it takes me to this. There's no transfer of NWFs or NWDs by viewpoint that those are saved into. So again, all we do is select Issue Tracker, double click on it, and takes us directly to that area and allows us to navigate around there. If I want to come to my next issue in Navisworks, I just pull up, still on my secondary monitor, and we can come into our, looks like we have a duct clashing here. So we have this test in Revizto. I double click on it, and immediately it takes us to that duct inside of Navisworks. And this is all based on the coordinate location of that. And so we'll do one more here. We got, looks like we have some pipes that we highlighted here we had an issue with. And if I double click on that, immediately in Navisworks, it takes us to that. And what you'll notice is it even kept the same pipes highlighted. So I highlighted these two in my screenshot inside of Revizto, and it remembers that information across platforms. So great way to communicate back and forth with AutoCAD, Revit, Navisworks, and then track all of these in an easy, intuitive platform that we can then pull reports from and gain additional information from. So I'm going to, let me clear this section out, and we're going to go into a couple other aspects of Revizto that we haven't touched on. So you guys saw me use the sectioning tool. Again, this follows the same principle as the one-click mentality. We're going to select the sectioning tool, drag, drop, basically let go, and it's going to section on any plane you'd like. If I want to cut by the floor level, all I do is double click the floor, and it's going to allow me to section cut by the floor level as well, even with this heavy model. So our next aspect of Revizto, I'm going to go back to home. This is one of the new features for 4.4, heavily utilized for coordination. So one of the nice things about this button here is we're able to filter and isolate by pretty much anything. So what I mean by that is we're actually just going to shut the entire model off here. So we turned everything off. So it gives us the ability to go by category. So if we want to just turn on our air terminals, our cable fittings, our cable trays, ceilings as well. So these are just based on Revit category. We know that these aren't always accurate, but it can give you a good idea of where things are in the model. We also have the ability to color code these as well. So I'll just make all these green today. You'll immediately see those turn green. And we'll turn on our duct lines and we'll make these maybe red for ease. So we'll turn those on. Maybe we also want, let's find our walls. Maybe we want our walls on as well. So we can come into here and we can turn these on and say, you know what, let's turn those on or hide some of those. We can do that, see where those are located in the project. Additionally, if we come back in here, let's scroll down here, we'll make some of these transparent as well. So I'll turn these on and maybe we just want these transparent and we really like this visibility setting. So we can still see our color coded red and green here with the walls being transparent. So instead of going through this, you know, a couple seconds of this process or having everybody have to go through that process, we can start to combine this with our viewpoints tab, which we talked about earlier. So we'll add a viewpoint and I'll just name this coordination wall view maybe. I'll hit enter. And so now at any time, we can save that as our home button, or we can access that through the viewpoints button to remember that. Additionally, if we create issues utilizing this color profile, for example, if I came in here and we could see that we are clashing an issue here, clashing part of our model, we'll just drag and drop, and I'll just name this red hitting gray. And what's nice about Revizto here is even though this isn't color coded like this in the home button, when we select done, it pushes that into the issue tracker. So if I go back to, here's our section box that we did, it's color coded like this. Now, if we jump to our next issue, it changes the color profile according to that specific issue. So it's all done on the back end. So jumping back into the other filtering aspects of Revizto, I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to just shut this entire thing off again. We'll turn the colors back to normal, and then we're just going to turn these all off. So now if I go to level, we can start to stack and combine some of these. So maybe we want to just turn on our basement level. Still got some of my objects. There we go. So I'll go into level, and from level, I'll shut off the entire model, and I'll just turn on our basement and our ceilings and, you know, different levels that we'd like to see. So by doing that, we can come in and we can shut off different disciplines from our link file to combine and stack some of these. So maybe we just want to see our fire protection that falls on these two levels. We can isolate and color code those accordingly and save that as a viewpoint. So we'll go back to levels again, and I'm going to turn everything back on, and we'll go down to our link files. So this is obviously one of the most utilized features. We can then see the difference between what a fire protection pipe and a electrical pipe might be. So we're going to actually just shut this entire thing off, and then we can turn on the different linked files. So if we bring in and export this from an NWD in Navisworks, we can actually isolate the individual NWCs, and they'll actually show up within here. So breaking this up almost like a more intuitive selection tree in Navisworks. So we'll turn on the different portions of the model, and then very easily, just like we did before, we can select the specific color we're looking for, and then we can include these colors in our BIM execution plan. So that is our filtering button. So I'm going to go back to home here. So phases is the other aspect of Revizto. So we can bring in different phases. We can select these and filter by you know, what we have coming in through Revit, and we can see where that project is coming through. We can start to tie these in with viewpoints as well. Add those into the coordination colors as well, and save those as a viewpoint based on what you have filtered. So you can start to stack and combine a lot of these different features together to really get you exactly what you're looking for. So camera share, we're going to touch on a lot more in our next webinar on the 30th of August. Teaming up with our San Diego office, and we're going to do a specific VR only and just talk about specific ways to include VR into your coordination workflow. So Revizto VR, if you guys aren't familiar with it, is fundamentally different than any other VR because we don't focus on the beautification of the model. Our focus is on understanding the model and understanding the data within the model. And so we can actually fly through. When we make changes, we can see those changes reflected in Revizto, you know, the same day. So when we're going through this in VR, we can click on things, we can look at issues, we can see clashes, we can see all that intelligent information in VR. So if we click on something in VR, we're going to see that information pop up just like we do in the desktop viewer. So with that being said, if you guys will see that webinar coming through on the 30th, highly recommend joining that and kind of seeing how some of our customers are ingraining VR into their coordination workflow and actually gaining ROI from it. This is our video button. So very easily we can record and narrate a video, and it's going to track that in real time. We can pass that out into an email. We can post on an FTP site. We can pass that on just as an MOV file or a MP4 as well. So our last thing that we're going to touch on today before we jump into questions in the next 5 minutes is going to be on the 2D platform. So the 2D aspect of Revizto is going to function the exact same way as the 3D platform. So it's based on coordinates. Although these sheets are coming through, these are intelligent sheets. So we'll see a list of all of our linked files, what sheets came in with what, and we can just break those out, select those different plans, and see those in the model. I know we already touched on the sheet overlay, which is a really nice feature, but there's a couple other aspects we haven't talked about on these plans. I'm going to jump into one of these plans here. We can zoom in. We have our hyperlinks, so we can click on this. This is going to take you to any detail. So these details are intelligent as well. So if we came into this detail and we want to see what this really looked like in the model, we can just select that detail, and it'll actually overlay that specific detail on the model as well. So we can pull, drag, and drop just like we have a plan. So I'm going to go back to our 2D view. Additionally, on here, if we select 2 issues, it's actually going to show us the issues that fall on those specific details. So this example has 2 different issues associated with it, and it's going to filter those out. Taking it maybe another step further, if we go back to 2D, on any of these different plans, we can jump to that specific location. Because there's coordinates associated with it, we can select jump to 3D, scroll into a specific question or problem area. Maybe it's right next to these pipes. We'll just double click, and it's going to take us right into that area where we saw those pipes on that plan. So all these sheets that we bring into Revit are intelligent, and we can also do this with PDFs. So if you guys are getting PDFs posted to your project site, we can import those, and we can actually drag and overlay dumb PDFs where we lose all that intelligent BIM information, you know, when we convert that to the PDF, but we can assign those back coordinates inside of Revizto just by simply selecting the corners of the three different corners within the sheet and overlaying it on top of the model. Pretty simple to do and a great way to ingrain PDFs into the workflow. And lastly is our new issue button here. So again, just like you can in 3D, we can intelligently mark up plans and switch back into Revit and actually see these red lines, not on the Revit plan, but on the other window, which is basically a mirror of the Revit plan. So if we jump into here, we can drag. So the first process, when we drag and drop this is just telling it the coordinate location of where this issue is falling. So we'll just drag it right here. I'll select our markup tool, and we can just redline just like we were in any other kind of markup tool. I'll name this. We can also come over here, make additional markups of problem areas that we have. I'll name it test sheet. We can add a photograph, take a photograph, mark up the photograph as well, select done, and it's going to push that into the Revizto issue tracker. So here's our test 3D. We can assign it, and then just like any other intelligent markup here, we can have additional people. Once we assign that, we'll mark it as in progress. I'll assign to Greg again. There's Greg. So I'll assign it to Greg again, and we'll just come into here, and I'll highlight and add additional markup. So if I'm Greg, I'm going to come in here and say, you know what, here's a different area that we need to take a look at. I'll select done. And again, it adds that intelligent markup to the vector sheet. So if we were in Revit and we were to double click on this, it's actually going to pull up this specific linked sheet from within the model. So just another way to intelligently work on sheets. And then the benefit of utilizing Revizto, because it has intelligent information, we can select this 2D sheet and we can actually see where other problem areas are falling on this specific plan, including the one that we currently marked up. And when we select 3D, it's actually going to take us to the 3D model of that. So any issue we create, it gives us the ability to go back and see those pipes that we marked up in that plan, and then bounce back to the actual 2D and see where that's located. So with that being said, we got about 13 minutes left. I think that's all we have in terms of all I'm going to run through today in terms of Revizto. If there's other things you guys would like to see, certainly provide us feedback. My email is mark@revizto.com. So if there's things you liked or didn't like about this webinar, don't be shy. Feel free to let me know what you guys would rather see or things that you'd like us to focus on next time. We're going to be doing a high-level overview like this, I think 2 or 3 times a month. So I'll be running one once a month, and then my counterpart, Greg and Nathan, will also be running one. So We're going to be trying to do that more often so we can get other individuals on the team to jump in if they have some free time over the lunch hour. Depending on what region they are, they can jump in and see this. Again, this is recorded, so we can pass this out as well. But with that being said, let's jump into some questions. So we got a handful of questions right here. We're gonna try to jump into these. Here we go. Try to expand that. There we go. All right, so the first question we got here, Gabrielle says, here at the office we use Revizto also to present projects to clients, and sometimes we modify materials within Revizto, and later if we have to update the model for some reason, we re-export the RVT file and sometimes lose edited materials. Can it be due to something we're doing wrong in the export screen? So if you have rendered appearance checked, it could be part of the export process. It's going to override some of those. But if you change materials in Revit and you're re-exporting the model, those should be reflected back into Revizto. Same with RPCs, ArcVision content, all that stuff should come into Revizto. So service at Revizto is another place you guys can get questions answered. If you have questions like that, certainly don't be shy. And if you guys have questions like that, you can certainly send them to me or service at Revizto, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So if that doesn't help, Gabrielle, certainly try to get in touch with us so we can kind of take it a step further and look at what could be causing that. Does this program need to be open for scheduled export? Yeah, great question. So yes, the answer is no, it does not have to be open. So you actually don't even need Revit open. Because Revizto can't guess passwords, and nor does your security departments want us guessing passwords, it needs to be logged into an active session of Windows. So that's really the only parameter within the export scheduler. So you just need to be logged into an active session of Windows. It will actually launch, open up that local RVT file or Navisworks file, and export that out, share it to the team. So the file does not need to be open. How does Revizto work with clash results from Navisworks? So you can import those clashes within Navisworks. So that's another great question. So we can import those through, and let me share my screen again here. So within Navisworks, anything we have within the clash detective will actually show up, and we have a sync clashes button. So when we select sync clashes, it's going to pull up basically a mirror of what we have within the clash detective. So in this clash detective, we had one test called test 1, and there's 212 clashes in there. So those are grouped. You can import those in, and it'll actually import in as issues, so you can assign those. Another thing we've seen customers starting to do as well is if you notice that there's major problem areas within the model, they'll actually just jump into the Navisworks project. And instead of manually grouping, 100 of those clashes together, or taking time to do that, we'll just isolate, maybe, okay, we can see right here, there's a piping issue. So I would just select that pipe that's an issue, create that as a new issue inside of Revizto, assign this back to our designer, and immediately they're able to, move that another foot down. They resend the RVT file or NWC. We rerun our clash detection in our NWD, and we, immediately eliminate 100 clashes. So we'll do that, like track maybe, major problem areas, assign those out, and then just have them update those issues and then rerun clash detection. A lot of times we can eliminate and take, go from thousands of issues to hopefully hundreds of issues on a large project. So that's another kind of unique way. And we can spend more time talking about the specific clash detection workflow in more detail on another webinar if that's something you guys would like to see. Says, so here's another question. Says, hopefully I didn't miss it. Has there been any updates to issue tracker output for reports? Easy to read graphics, etc. Yes, so there's been one or two releases in August so far, and I think we have one more coming up. So what we've done is in the reporting section, we give the ability to select different sizes. You can be a lot more granular in the type of report you'd like to bring out. So I know originally we got some complaints about the thumbnails being too small. So if it was like a large vector sheet, we were, basically the screenshots and the images that were included in like a PDF or Word document print off report were unusable. So you have all this great information, but then you couldn't really see what the markup was. So we give the ability to customize those plans to give a little bit more granularity to the reporting to get exactly what you need. And if you don't need that kind of detail, you guys can keep it small for a larger number of issues. So great question, Ben. We use ArchiCAD. Seems like it works best with Revit. Any notable progress? So that's Peter. So yeah. So with ArchiCAD, we support ArchiCAD in terms of how it exports. So we can still leverage the ArchiCAD model, bring it into Revizto. In terms of tracking and ability and the connection to do the switchback in the connection with Navisworks and whatnot, you're right, ArchiCAD does not have the same powerful aspects that Revit do. So I am not sure exactly if, I think at some point we might support that. I know just a lot of majority of the projects that we're experiencing have been done utilizing RVT files and collaborating utilizing AutoCAD-based platforms. So that's kind of where we spend a lot of the time on the integration side. But we do support ArchiCAD, just not the switchback. So you'd have to actually find that issue back in ArchiCAD, opposed to just double clicking and having it open up as an isometric view. Any notable progress on the problem with going from an issue in Revizto issue tracker generated exports from Navisworks directly into Revizto model view via 3D model depicted in the issue? So Paul Kaleric, I'll have to follow up with you on that to get a little bit more detail on that. Maybe so Paul's question was is when you select, if I understand it correctly, so when you select the 3D view, so for example, if I have in this screenshot, I have this 3D view. If I click on this and I go to 3D, you can see obviously it took me to those pipes. So if the issue is the screenshot in Navisworks or the screenshot in Revizto doesn't line up with a 3D model, I know if the project shifts, if the project survey point or true north or something shifted with the coordinates, sometimes that can throw it off. In our next release, we're going to be supporting pure coordinates, 0 to 0, origin to origin, etc. So there's a number of different benefits to our 4.5 release. We're pretty excited to release that in about a month. So that should address any coordinate issues and allow you to manipulate the X, Y, and Z within Revizto for the different models. So so hopefully that will address your issue. If I'm understanding correctly, if I'm not, you'll have to give me a shout back. Let's see. Can Revizto interact with Glue? So not yet. So that's been a request of being able to switch back into Glue. It's something we've heard before. So maybe in the future we'll do that, but that's not, at least that's not in the development plans for 4.5 or 4.6. We use, let's see here. See if we have any additional questions here. Looks like, can you import Navisworks Flash? We already answered that. Yes, you can. So I think that's all the questions that we have. Yep, I think that's all the questions we have. So anyways, I appreciate you guys all making some time. Looks like we're able to get through this in exactly 58 minutes. So I appreciate the time everybody spent on here. And if there's any feedback or questions or things you'd rather see or want me to spend more time on, certainly don't be shy. You're not going to hurt our feelings, and let us know what you guys think, and we'd be happy to try to incorporate that into our next webinar. So thanks again, guys, for taking this time. This is recorded, and we'll post this up on our YouTube page so you guys can share that with anybody else that might have wanted to attend that couldn't make it. So we'll talk soon. Thanks, guys.